What I wanted to talk about today is a technology that we've been working on for, gosh, well, it's been a long time, at least 5 years. Um, and we've had some success with it, and we think it actually has a lot of play. And again, this is really just a discussion of kind of the core uh, dynamics that we see within the SaaS and Web3 kind of environment, specifically the need for uh, uh, bioinformetrics. And again, I'll talk about what work we've done in it. And again, we're not the only game in town, but in general, think it'll become a big topic here going forward. Um, and again, don't let the title of the company fool you. We're not a crypto play or any of that stuff. Blockchain Exchange Network is a company founded to construct dynamic personal data clouds and to do it in a SaaS format so that people would have uh, a data set that was essentially sticky to them and could be um, guarded, protected, and effectively transportable between entities such as healthcare, automotive, home, all types of basically core applications where they can still maintain their anonymity and privacy, but still maintain the personalization and the other types of things that go with them. So again, we do use blockchain, but we don't use it in a crypto sense. So don't people are always thrown by that name. So let me dispel that kind of from the start here. Um, Here's the baseline of what we're talking about. As far as mobile three, web three, different variants of software as a service or platform as a service or whatever variant of the as a service variant that you want to talk about, we really kind of run into or continue to run into an issue where we needed to actually know exactly who we were talking to. Only because as data became more critical and more sensitive and frankly more intrusive, um, it became evident that we were opening up Pandora's box with regard to um, not just hacking in the traditional sense, but basically being able to tap into people's lives in a more dramatic way. Let's put it that way. Um, what we found was that the current biometrics and the two-factor authentication and all of the biometrics that basically have been applied are great, but um, frankly, they were just kind of pushing the can down the road a little bit. It wasn't actually a real solution. So we needed a way to enable uh, service providers, network-based service providers, to actually be able to genuinely know who they were talking to and to genuinely understand the people that they were talking to as well. And so, what we needed to do was basically find a structure that allowed us to, serve really in a 5G environment, a native, always on endpoint user identification. But the problem with security in general is that, um, how to put it? That everyone demands it, but no one wants to pay for it. And if it inconveniences people, they will do their darndest to work around it. And again, I'm probably preaching to the choir. Many of you probably know that, initially we said, hey, look, we're going to use passwords. And of course, everyone used the word password. We said, well, no, no, you've got to make it more complex. So they added a one on the end of password. Great. That wasn't exactly what we were hoping for. Every time we actually put any kind of hurdle in front of folks, they take the easiest way through it and ultimately will actively defeat it. I mean, if you force them to use complex kind of passwords and structures, you'll find post-its all over their compute devices. Two-factor authentication is great, but it too has basically suffered. And I've been told, in several meetings, so, well, gosh, the biometrics are going to take care of that. We've got fingerprint, we've got facial recognition. But the reality is that those both take information and really are a convenient way of putting a very large number into your system. So, in other words, rather than typing a long numeric value, this is just a way of automating and resolving it down to a large numeric value. The downside there is, even though it's a little bit harder to hack, once you actually have it, you've compromised the person for good. I mean, you can change your password, but you can't change your fingerprint, and you certainly can't, I mean, not without, you know, movie star plastic surgeons, you're not going to change your face. Um, so in reality, you're actually just putting more risk into the system by using existing biometrics. And that was basically kind of the starting point for the BIN blockchain exchange network. We needed a way to create a technology that would provide pervasive security, that it would be transparent, that it would apply across the board to all um, network born services, and that it would do it in a way that um, effectively didn't, that was ideally transparent to the user, that the user didn't have to play along with us. And so that's what we've done. It took a lot to do this, by the way. What we did was we started with the actual core tools that we had. And again, I started in AI back in the 1980s before it was popular. It was still pretty niche back then. But again, I was working for General Dynamics and we were developing, um, you know, uh, core technologies to identify, bad guys and that type of thing. And of course, we had a lot of compute resource and we could design custom hardware. The speaker earlier was talking about hardware being the key, and we were having to develop our own chips to do it. But in that work, and then through years following it, it became evident that um, people are unique, but they have certain commonalities from the standpoint of their own activities. In other words, everyone is different, but everyone is very much themselves, and they represent a pattern. And what we've done is we've actually used a hybrid edge AI uh, data engine that is coupled with a backend server, and we've fused the sensors within current cell phone devices. All of the Apple and Samsung variants, we're still working on Pixel, but um, and in doing that, what we've done is we've developed a mechanism that allows us to develop a life print, if you will, a fingerprint of a person's activity and characteristics. And we incorporate a lot of things. We incorporate their voice, their walking gait, where they go, continuity in where they go, accelerometers, the gyroscopes, magnetometers, even. And in doing that, we have found that we can get a very detailed, we don't need to know who the person is. What we've built is effectively a way of verifying that that person is the same person that we have been patterning through the course of hours, months, years, in some cases. And we've done it with a fair amount of success. Uh, we really never need to identify the user themselves. We just need them to be themselves. We just need them to be consistent in their normal day to day. And there'll be variations. There will be situations where things will change. And we adapt associated with that. We know that they fall out of their, patterns and systems. And that, of course, is the time that we would be, you know, more inclined to raise our security and our challenge mechanisms if basically we couldn't have a good handle that they are who they say they are. And we've had a fair amount of success with this from the standpoint of we have this running in 6 cities now in northern Arizona, and the system. I think we've got well, I won't give you a number, but we've got quite a few people on it. And in doing this, we can tell basically when someone hands a phone from one person to another, literally within seconds, simply by the baseline of how the phone is held and a few other metrics associated with it. And we can do it in a low data load kind of way. Now, immediately, I know that everyone's freaking out. They're saying, "Oh my God, privacy, privacy, privacy." Um, we don't necessarily need to know, again, who the person is. We just need to know whether they are acting like themselves. And so we've gone a long way to make sure that we're not taking the data and just, you know, slamming it all over the place or making it, individually accessible. Instead, we're actually doing a lot of the local work on the edge itself. And again, we can only do some of it, but we can do enough that we can actually pull a lot of the personal information out and the personal characteristics and just deal with the patterning. So we look for continuity in that patterning. And that's really kind of been the secret of how it all, ended up working. Now, what we end up with is kind of a continuously growing list that is user specific. It basically is comprised of, specific authentication points and gateways within those points, classification blocks, and kind of an ongoing breadcrumb of identity, if you will, not breadcrumb of location, but breadcrumb of identity, where we can look for the continuity between the individual components. What's kind of nice about it is that to spoof the system, you actually have to kill off the not. Well, I mean, that sounds negative, doesn't it? You have to get in the way of the true person. You have to effectively break that continuity and pull away from that continuity and then force the originator not to be themselves and not to continue. And you've got to basically then be able to replicate their life pattern fairly precisely, just from the standpoint of small characteristics, even. Um, we haven't found a way as yet, and again, I'll never say never, but it's very, very, very difficult to trick this system only because it's not dealing with episodic data. Um, Episodic data is when you fall off the map and you wake up someplace and you log in, or you you know basically check out of a given program and you pop up on the other side of the country after you've taken a flight. Um, Again, this system, the bioinformetrics, actually maintain continuity. They don't have to watch and deal with it all the time, but they know that basically that we have these transition points in gateways. You've gone to an airport. You have, you know, basically woken up at another airport. If we lost continuity with you, you're acting like yourself, but of course you're out of sorts from the standpoint of our probability of identification. But that continuity is what allows us to maintain identity, and we can do it in a very transparent way. Frankly, all of our users, um, frankly, we get feedback like, "Is it working? Is it doing anything?" Only because they just don't see it operating. They don't see, a little light or a little button or a little something giving them indication that it's working. And in the end, for the most part, we've been able to in round the need for passwords, in round the need for critical personal information data, only because we know exactly who we're talking to. And we know that that's not only their phone, but we know that that's them using their phone. So, anyway, I won't go into deep, dark detail, but again, currently we've got the system running in Southern California and Northern Arizona, kind of as our, given test bed. Again, when we're dealing with personal data, we want it to make sure that we had our heads screwed on straight, and we weren't, out there going nuts with regard to all the variants that we could deal with. But it's actually worked out very well, and we've kind of gotten everything kind of broken down. We've gone through situations where indeed we've dealt with people in the fluidity of their day-to-day lives. So we deal with, people that, go into work every day and they're nice and consistent. And we deal with, salespeople who are completely inconsistent and traveling, to clients and doing all types of variations in their things. But that becomes part of their pattern. Um, in some of our early experiments, I'll even point out that we had one individual. I came into the lab and the guys were all upset. We had one individual where all of his data, his personal patterning had gone off the rails. And of course, we were all wringing our hands saying, "Oh my gosh, this thing isn't working right. Um, what is so special about this person?" And it took us a while to figure it out. It turned out that the fellow had, uh, a treatable mental issue. He had stopped taking his medication, and we identified it before his family members realized it, simply by the variation in how he was acting and conducting himself, holding his phone, his walking gait. Things had changed. And frankly, that was the first point that we kind of cracked open the champagne and said, "Hey, we have something here." So it actually has proven itself from the standpoint of a lot of applications, not just security and authentication, but again, a whole bunch of other applications in general. So we're having some good time working on it. Again, the core technology itself is really intended up front to set aside some of the traditional problems that we've had associated with identifying people and identifying accounts and account usages, and making sure that, again, in a SaaS or a PaaS model, um, the services are being delivered appropriately and to the right people and at the right time, um, as well as securing data just in general from the standpoint of the personal information that really kind of is critical to certain delivery models. And in our sense, we just have that continuous stream of data. We don't provide that stream of data. Obviously, what we do is we boil it down into the patterning, and we provide our partners with what amounts to be a secure um, validation that indeed the person is who they say they are. And we do that also on a stream basis so that we maintain contact and no one can jump in the middle. We don't have the whole man in the middle problem. So anyway, we've gotten that sorted. That took a little bit as well. Um, how it's being applied initially, it's being applied as it was originally constructed as a personal protection protocol for personal data clouds. But again, we recognize that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg with regard to the core technology itself. But again, you got to make it work someplace to start with before you propagate it out to everything. So as it stands now, we can provide anonymity and unlock the value of data and remote software delivery from the standpoint of a SaaS model, um, and provide kind of a protection and monetization to both service providers as well as people, consumers. And we can do that without necessarily having to intrude on their lives. Even though we're looking at patterns, we're breaking those patterns down up front and not conveying the patterns themselves, but just conveying the consistency in the patterns themselves. For our next steps, as far as the bioinformetrics, we do have current licensees. We've had some good positive uptake of it all. And again, a lot of this is just fairly recent. But again, we ideally intend to kind of be kind of the core technology behind a lot of future innovation. But we think that it kind of unlocks a bunch of new opportunities within the SaaS environment. Of course, I haven't mentioned it a lot, but we are AI heavy, and we do have a fair amount of compute power behind us, and that has been the key to making this whole thing work. And that's kind of where we're at today. Again, stay tuned. We're still fairly early in the process, but everything's looking really good. I mean, don't want to tempt fate or jinx anything, but uh, we're looking forward to the future. We think we've got a kind of a good outlook going forward. And again, I'll leave you with we had one uh, assessment where we actually had the CEO of Heck Nielsen, FICO, Fair Isaac, take a look at where we're at, and he recognized real quickly that after seeing everything work, that really this kind of changes an awful lot from the standpoint of what we can do and what services we can really deliver going forward. And so we're hopeful kind of that his assessment is the same as ours. So anyway, that's all I had for you today.
There I am. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Patrick. That was awesome. That's really interesting and really unique. That case study in particular, when you were talking about helping solve that issue of the how did you explain it? It kind of going haywire on y'all.
Well, we had freaked out at the time. We weren't sure what we were still early on. We had only had about 100 users at the time. It was just like, oh my gosh, why is this thing going off the rails? And it was something that we never expected that we had that level of understanding. I mean, we knew we were pretty good, but
Yeah,
we ended up being better than we thought. The key thing is, though, again, from the standpoint of other folks and their technologies and rollout and all the rest, we are hoping that this kind of core technology really would get people thinking about all the new things that they can do from the standpoint of being able to uh, you know just our discussion with kind of the telemedicine community. They you know we've become their new best friends, just from the standpoint of the things that we can do. The financial services sector have been enthusiastic as well. um, and we're hopeful that it'll change kind of the core ideas of what people can do with existing SaaS and with existing uh, Web3 concepts going forward,
definitely.
only because you can genuinely trust who you're talking to.
Yeah. Yeah, I found it really interesting because I know here in Dallas at one of the universities, I think it was University of Texas Southern, I believe. They have a pretty big like mental health school, or just their college of health, but the mental health sector is super big here. And a project they recently launched within the last year was now they have some sort of like AI machine learning algorithm that allows them to basically dictate what medication they should put
Hmm.
you on based on your personality and other traits, obviously. And it's cut down the amount of prescriptions that a patient needs to utilize before finding the right one. Because typically it took anywhere from like 3 to 7 times different medications to find the right one for
Hmm.
their condition. So I thought that was extremely fascinating, and definitely medicine and health is one of the sectors, in my opinion, that kind of lacks a little bit on innovation and the technology component of it.
Well, what we ended up with was starting out trying to solve an immediate problem we had, which was if we were going to deliver a real data cloud and do it in a really strong way, we needed a different solution at the endpoint. And so we worked on it, we solved that problem, but then it kind of blossomed and pivoted into all these other things that we can do with it. And so, frankly, it's changed a lot of the nature of our company. We basically started out having to take a big step back, saying, "Wait a minute, we're trying to do this one segment when we've basically found kind of the core solution for a whole lot of people's problems." So there's the business side of the company has been back to the drawing board. You know what I mean?
Constantly evolving.
Absolutely. Pivot. Yep.
Yep. So, I want to be courteous of your time. I really appreciate you taking your time. It doesn't look like we have any questions that have come in yet, but I do have, one question for you that I've been
Sure.
kind of asking all the speakers is, what prediction do you have for 2023 in your space? What's one big assumption that you have about the industry and where it's heading and how founders and just companies can better prepare for the technological revolution ahead?
I genuinely think, and again, obviously I've been doing AI for 40 years now. That's painful to say. Um, I have never entered a year more optimistic that AI and machine learning was going to really change everything. And I think we're actually at that tipping point. Again, everyone's saying that. I realize that. But again, from
From an
a vet,
insider.
well, from a veteran of the, there's a reason my hair is this color. From a veteran of the industry, yeah, this is we are, if not this year, next. Everything is about to pivot, and everything I see now basically is in a position of being enabled in a different way. Um, it took forever. It took
Yeah.
forever. Between the hardware, between the software, between the focus and concentration, and it took forever. But I think that we're right at that exponential pivot point. And so
Yeah.
I just can't say enough about the future. I really can't.
That's really interesting because I think you're right. I think the next 12 to 18 months, like everything's going to change from a landscape perspective for companies. But more importantly, I think the people that actually embrace the AI and machine learning and that technology will be able to just kind of exponentially like outpace its competitors, right? Because I think what it's doing, it's helping us become more efficient, avoiding less human error, right, which will only drive more productivity and revenue
Mhm.
at the end of the day. But more importantly, I think it's helping us make smarter, educated decisions.
I think it's doing just that. I think it's changing our decision-making process. It's changing the way we work. It's changing the way we're gonna deliver products and the products that we're going to expect to see. And, frankly, again, truly everything.
Yep. And, just the one last part that you said, I think while this could be the tipping point, the craziest part is that we barely are even like touching the surface of this. From my
Oh,
little knowledge in
mm,
AI and in
uh,
machine learning and
like,
just like this type of technology. I mean, like
ju
ChatGPT is great and all, but like, that's kind of like the mainstream AI, if you want to call it that.
the the Chat GPT has done great things, good things, marvelous things. Wait a few years.
Yeah.
It'll and again, I'm not taking one thing away from the OpenAI guys. Brilliant guys, wonderful guys. Just wait.
Yeah,
Just wait.
no, I'm stoked. Yeah, I've definitely been speaking to other individuals like you in the space that have been there and done that. And yeah, I mean they're like just like they're like this is nothing compared to what you're gonna see in the next year or two. Like it's going to be crazy. So I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to that. The constant evolving, the iterating, the pivoting, the evolving. It's life of an early stage startup.
Yeah.
So
Well,
thank you so
let's
much.
you
Go
bet.
ahead. I'm
Thank you for
sorry.
having. No, go ahead and I was just going to say that I think there will be those that embrace AI and machine learning in their products in the future, and then there are the ones that won't be in business anymore.
And struggle. Yeah. So thank you so much, Dr. Patrick. That was awesome. I really appreciate your conversation and the wealth of knowledge that you brought to the table. Where would be the best place for people to connect with you? I'll find Twitter, LinkedIn, email.
LinkedIn is the one that I'm on the most. Yeah.
Sounds good. Cool. I
Okay.
definitely just connected prior to our conversation. So I look forward to seeing you at another event, hopefully. And thanks again for spending your morning with us.
You betcha. Thank you so
Have a
much.
great one.
You too. Bye bye.